How does a story survive for almost 2 decades on royal websites, magazine interviews, global biographies, and polished PR campaigns, only for people to suddenly realize the foundation underneath it may have been cracked the entire time? That is the question exploding around Meghan Markle right now, because what started as a tiny detail hidden inside a royal biography has suddenly turned into a full-scale credibility war involving the British monarchy itself. And the deeper people dig, the stranger this story becomes. 2 official institutions, 2 different educational claims, 1 woman at the center of it all. And now critics are asking the question nobody inside Buckingham Palace seems willing to answer out loud: who approved the version that wasn't true? The bombshell starts with something deceptively small, just words. Tiny words buried inside official biographies that most people would never think to question. Back in November 2017, right after Meghan's engagement to Prince Harry became global headline news, Northwestern University proudly celebrated one of its former students joining the royal family. Their official press office released a statement saying Meghan graduated in 2003 with a double major in theater and international studies. Simple, direct, academic wording straight from the university itself, the institution that issued the degree. End of story, or at least that's what everyone assumed. But then came the palace biography after the royal wedding in May 2018, and suddenly the wording shifted in a way that now looks incredibly suspicious. Royal.uk described Meghan's credentials differently: not international studies, international relations, not a double major, a dual degree, same woman, same graduation year, completely different academic claim. And once people noticed the contradiction, the entire thing started unraveling like a thread hanging from a royal robe. Because here's where this gets dangerous. Northwestern's wording matters more than anyone else's. They issued the degree. They know exactly what she studied. So if Northwestern says double major in theater and international studies, then why did the official website of the British monarchy publish dual degree in theater and international relations? Those are not interchangeable phrases, not academically, not structurally, and definitely not on an official royal biography viewed by millions across the world. Critics immediately started asking whether Meghan exaggerated her own credentials for years, and whether the palace knowingly amplified them without proper verification. Suddenly, this wasn't gossip anymore. It became a question about institutional credibility, because once Buckingham Palace stamps information onto royal.uk, people treat it like verified historical fact. That's what makes this story explosive. The Crown didn't just repeat a rumor, it legitimized it. Then came the silence. The weird, uncomfortable silence that only makes scandals feel bigger. Because instead of publicly correcting the wording, once people started noticing inconsistencies, something else happened entirely. The education details quietly disappeared from the royal biography altogether. No announcement, no clarification, no statement explaining why the wording changed after sitting online for nearly 6 years. One day it was there, the next day it wasn't. And that silent deletion only poured gasoline onto the fire, because people immediately began asking the obvious question: if there was no issue, then why erase it at all? Now, the internet started hunting deeper. Commentators began pulling Northwestern's course catalogs apart line by line, trying to understand whether international relations even existed as a major at the university during Meghan's years there. What they found shocked a lot of people, because according to Northwestern's own academic structure, there was no standalone undergraduate major officially called international relations. Instead, the closest equivalent was something called international studies, an adjunct major connected through Weinberg College. That detail matters because it changes the entire framing of Meghan's academic profile. International studies existed. International relations didn't officially exist the way her interviews repeatedly implied. And critics now say that distinction may have been intentionally blurred over the years because international relations simply sounds more prestigious, more political, more globally elite, more diplomatic, more impressive on television interviews and celebrity profiles. Then the structure itself started raising eyebrows. Northwestern's own policies reportedly prevented theater students inside the School of Communication from double majoring within the same school. That meant Meghan's academic setup could only have worked one way structurally: theater as the primary major and international studies as the adjunct program, not dual degrees, not 2 separate academic credentials, just a double major configuration under the university's rules, which suddenly makes the palace wording look even stranger, because dual degree carries heavier academic weight. It implies something far more extensive and demanding than what Northwestern itself described. And once critics noticed that inflation, they started asking whether this was an innocent misunderstanding or carefully polished branding. What really detonated the conversation, though, was the discovery that Meghan herself had apparently used the phrase international relations years before the Palace biography even existed. Suddenly, old interviews resurfaced everywhere: magazine profiles, television appearances, casual celebrity conversations where she repeatedly described her education using the exact same phrasing later adopted by Royal.uk. People realized this wording wasn't random. It had a trail, a very consistent trail: international relations and theater, over and over again. And that consistency is exactly why critics became convinced the Palace didn't invent the wording themselves. They likely repeated Meghan's own preferred version without properly verifying it against Northwestern's records, which raises another uncomfortable question nobody inside the monarchy seems eager to touch. How does the communications machine behind the British royal family fail to fact-check something this basic before publishing it globally? Because this isn't some tiny fan blog hidden in a forgotten corner of the internet. This is Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace. Teams of professional communication staff whose entire job is to vet biographies, historical details, titles, honors, credentials, and official narratives. People are now saying this mistake should have been caught in minutes. Instead, it survived for years, and the longer it stayed online, the more it spread into reference works, celebrity biographies, encyclopedia entries, and media reports all over the world. That's how institutional misinformation grows. Once an official source publishes something, everyone downstream copies it without questioning it. Suddenly, the inflated version becomes accepted reality. Then, the timing got even more suspicious. February 2024, Harry and Meghan launch Sussex.com. March 2024, Meghan launches American Riviera Orchard. 4 days later, Royal.uk quietly merges Harry and Meghan's individual biographies into one shared page, and the detailed education wording disappears completely. No explanation, no correction, just gone. And critics immediately connected the dots because the timing looked almost too perfect. As Meghan rolled out new commercial branding, the monarchy's website suddenly stopped publicly repeating details that people were beginning to scrutinize more aggressively online. Convenient? Coincidence? Damage control? That's exactly the debate now exploding across royal commentary channels. And then, just when the internet thought the story couldn't get messier, another layer crashed into the narrative like a wrecking ball. A mysterious website started circulating online claiming Meghan Markle never graduated from Northwestern at all. Suddenly, conspiracy channels exploded with screenshots, dramatic thumbnails, and screaming headlines insisting there was government proof that her entire education history had been fabricated. The website looked official enough to fool casual viewers. Government-style formatting, institutional language, technical wording, and people desperate for scandal grabbed onto it instantly because once audiences smell secrecy, they become willing to believe almost anything. But this is where the story takes a bizarre turn that actually exposes something even bigger than Meghan herself: the complete collapse of trust online. Because when investigators looked closely at that so-called official source, the entire thing started falling apart almost immediately. The domain being quoted everywhere, clrn.org, once belonged to a legitimate California educational project decades ago. But the original state-funded initiative had nothing to do with university graduation records or alumni databases. It reviewed K-12 educational software. That was it. Eventually, the project died, the state stopped funding it, and the domain remained floating online like an abandoned building waiting for someone else to move in. And apparently, somebody did. Suddenly, people realized the current site wasn't functioning like a government agency at all. It was operating like a monetized affiliate website. Amazon commission disclosures hidden at the bottom. Fake-looking phone numbers using the infamous 555 television prefix. No legitimate state contact structure. No actual registrar authority. Yet somehow this bizarre leftover domain became proof for channels desperate to push the scandal even further. And ironically, the collapse of that conspiracy theory actually strengthened one important fact in Meghan's favor. Northwestern University itself consistently maintained that she absolutely did graduate in 2003. Their communications office said it publicly. Alumni records acknowledged her. Professors who reportedly taught her confirmed it. That part was never the real controversy. The real controversy was the wording inflation, the transformation of international studies into international relations, the shift from double major into dual degree. Tiny edits that may sound harmless to ordinary people but become enormous once attached to official royal branding, because Prestige operates through language, and powerful people understand that better than anyone. And honestly, the timing around March 2024 still hangs over this entire controversy like a thundercloud nobody can ignore. Meghan launches new branding projects. Sussex.com appears. American Riviera Orchard enters the spotlight. Then suddenly, the detailed royal biography wording disappears almost immediately afterward. Critics believe that sequence matters. They think palace officials realized the education claims were becoming vulnerable under renewed public attention and quietly stepped backward before the story exploded even further. Because imagine the nightmare scenario for Buckingham Palace if major outlets started openly questioning whether royal. UK published inflated credentials for 6 straight years without verification. That would damage the institution itself, not just Meghan Markle. Suddenly, the monarchy's communications operation looks careless at best and deceptive at worst. And institutions built on credibility fear that kind of narrative more than almost anything else. Meanwhile, the internet keeps spiraling deeper into obsession. People are now re-examining everything connected to Meghan's past through a suspicious lens. Her time in Argentina, her Spanish language claims, her internships, her early biographies. Old interviews once viewed as harmless celebrity chatter are suddenly being dissected frame by frame like forensic evidence in a criminal investigation. Critics say they see a repeated pattern of embellishment. Supporters argue this entire thing is being blown wildly out of proportion by hostile royal commentators desperate to paint Meghan as dishonest. But that's exactly why the story keeps growing, because both sides think the other side is hiding something. And once a public figure becomes trapped inside that kind of polarized war, every detail becomes weaponized. The most explosive part, though, is still the question nobody inside Buckingham Palace has publicly answered. Who approved the original 2018 biography wording? Who reviewed it? Who signed off on dual degree in international relations despite Northwestern already using different language months earlier? Critics say those are not rhetorical questions anymore. Those are institutional questions, editorial questions, accountability questions, because somebody inside the royal communication structure either failed to verify the information or knowingly allowed inflated wording to remain online for years. And until that question gets answered directly, people are going to keep assuming the silence itself is meaningful. That's the terrifying thing about scandals involving powerful institutions. The cover-up energy often becomes bigger than the original issue. Most ordinary people probably would not have cared very much if the palace had simply corrected the wording openly years ago. One statement, one clarification, end of story. But instead, the wording quietly vanished without acknowledgement, and that silence transformed a small academic discrepancy into an international credibility controversy that now stretches across royal commentary, YouTube investigations, tabloids, forums, and social media wars. The absence became louder than the original claim ever was, and now the story hangs there unresolved, suspended in this strange fog where everybody seems to know something happened, but nobody powerful wants to officially explain it. Northwestern still stands by Meghan as a graduate. The palace quietly removed the disputed wording. Reference websites continue repeating outdated claims copied from royal.uk. Critics continue screaming cover-up. Supporters continue calling it nitpicking. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace says absolutely nothing while the internet tears itself apart trying to interpret the silence. And maybe that's the most revealing detail of all, because when institutions are truly confident in their version of events, they usually speak clearly. But when pages disappear quietly in the middle of mounting scrutiny, people start asking whether the missing words tell a bigger story than the visible ones ever did. And somewhere behind palace walls, buried inside emails the public will probably never see, sits the answer to the question still haunting this entire scandal: who decided the royal website needed to change at all?